Hey everyone, I'm Haley. This is Bitter Kitten Crafts. This is a channel about knitting and crochet and yarn and crafting, and I have made so much progress on my projects in the past couple weeks, so I'm excited to show you guys all the progress I've made. And also, the Maryland Sheep and Wool Festival happened, so let's chat a little bit about that too. But let's go ahead and jump into Boo. Boo's really excited because I have a lot of yarn here in front of me, and she's like sniffing it. But let's go ahead and jump into my FOs because I finished two things, so that's exciting. They're both summer things. No biting. So yeah, I finished two things, and one of them you saw last time, and one of them is like I started and finished it in between the time I last filmed, which is pretty cool. So let's go ahead and start with the one you already saw. This is the My Little Secret Tank by Jessie Maed, and it is knit in Caron Layer Cupcakes, which is like it's like recycled polyester and cotton blend. And I'm somebody who's like kind of skeptical on what recycled means, but it said 100% recycled fibers. It was a little heavier weight than the pattern called for. This pattern calls for a DK weight yarn, or specifically like a sock yarn held double. And I used this yarn was labeled as a bulky weight, so my project ended up like a little bit bigger than I had hoped. I knit the size XL, which is like the appropriate size for my bust measurement, but unfortunately it's like a little bit loose in the back kind of, but it still fits really well. And I knitted on size 5 needles, and then I knit like this little part and the bottom ribbing on size 3 needles. I've knit this pattern a bunch of times, as I've like mentioned before, and I really enjoy it. It's literally just like a tube of 3x3 ribbing until you get to kind of the shaping part, so it goes really quickly. I'm definitely going to knit another one this season. I already have, hi Boo, I already have some yarn picked out for it. That's like probably my next cast on. But there's honestly not much to say. Oh, boo. So the way that this ended up working is that this gray is like the beginning of the new skein. You can kind of see here, like the yellow and gray. That's the beginning of the new skein. And then I used 2 entire skeins, as you can see, for the straps. I had literally like that much yarn left over. So that was pretty perfect. The other thing that I finished is a ranunculus. So I mentioned making this before in a couple other videos. This is actually the back. And I knew that I was planning to make this spring, and I knew it would take a very short amount of time to knit. So I'm sure all of you know this pattern. This is the Ranunculus by Midori Hirose. I knit the size 52.5 inches, and I do have, like, I'm like right on gauge. I do have like about 3 inches of positive ease, which is perfect. The stitch pattern is sort of hidden a tiny bit in the loose gauge of the cotton, like up here. I feel like it didn't pop as much as I would have liked it to, but overall I'm really happy with this garment. This is knit in Saucy Sport cotton yarn. I'll put a photo of it here. It's discontinued yarn that I thrifted, but this colorway is Pucci Blue, and I did look it up like on eBay, and there's a lot of this yarn sort of floating around in the universe. It's definitely some sort of mass-produced, like, low budget yarn. It's mercerized cotton, and I used literally every inch of this yarn to get this top as long as I did, and it's still pretty cropped, like very, very cropped. I have like some linen pants that I wear that are high-waisted that it does fit over those pretty perfectly, but otherwise it's a very cropped tee. I did make some modifications. So I knit this on size 10 needles, which is what it's called for in the pattern. But when I cast on initially, it's a very, very tiny cast on. And it was so tiny that like it didn't fit over my cat's head. So I had to kind of scrap that and go back to, basically it's like a tiny cast on and then an immediate increase row. And so instead of casting on and increasing, I just cast on the number of stitches called for at the end of the increase row, so that I would have a much, much, much wider neckline, which is perfect for what I wanted. There she goes. And other than that, I really didn't change anything, and I'll definitely be making more of this pattern, of course. You know, I'm not the only one who loves this pattern, but I know it's like kind of, some people hate it and some people love it. I love it. One note that I would make though, if you're using, so this yarn came in 50-gram skeins, and it's of course such a loose gauge, and I already woven my ends, and I really was very meticulous about weaving in my ends because, I mean, even so, you can kind of see, I don't know if you'll see it on camera, but you can kind of see, yeah, right there. You can kind of see where the ends were woven in a little bit, only because the gauge was so loose that it was just like a little glaring, which I don't love. And that's something that I would try to be probably even more meticulous about next time, maybe ending all my ends on the side or something like that. I was so worried about running out of yarn that I kind of just let the ends fall where they may, and I don't know if that was the best decision. This is the first time I've made this pattern without knitting any sort of ribbing on the sleeves, and I do really like how it's just a little cap sleeve, but the armpit is huge, so that's also something to kind of, like, that's the size of the armpit. That's kind of wild. It'll be good because it won't get too sweaty like in July when I plan on wearing this. The whole goal of this and the previous project and the other My Little Secret that I plan on casting on was kind of that I really wanted some knitted garments that I could wear outside of like the colder and cooler months. Here in DC, in Maryland, it gets really, really hot and humid and disgusting, like starting now, basically. So it really is like a good idea to have some stuff that's knitted that I could wear like in the real heat of the summer. And so I think that this is like the perfect option. Like I said, I'll probably knit another, if I can find some good cotton yarn that's kind of identical to this, I'll probably knit another one of these this year. So I have two other projects that y'all have seen before. One of them is my blanket, and I'm working on granny squares for, so I finished all the granny squares for a pink and orange blanket, and I immediately started a new granny square blanket just because that's kind of something I really enjoy and kind of crank them out. And this is the current color I'm working on. So this is Big Twist yarns. It's called JellyBean, and it only comes in this color and white. And obviously Big Twist is from Joann, which is now discontinued. So that's is what it is, but I'm working my way through a big stash of acrylic yarns and sock yarn, some of which I was gifted, some of which is like self-striping sock yarn that I had a big stash of, and I pulled out all my pinks and oranges and yellows, and that was my first color palette, and now my second blanket will be this kind of bluish palette, very, very heavily blue. And I have 144 squares planned for each blanket. This blanket I have like 17 done, I think, so just at like the tip of the iceberg. But the other one I have all my squares finished. I didn't like lug it out of the box to show y'all today because I haven't really made that much progress in sewing it together because I was busy making this entire ranunculus. But I'm pretty happy with how they're looking. Like the colors are really cute and they're matching how I wanted them to. And this yarn is fun. It's like an acrylic polyester blend. So the polyester is like that one little thread of changing color yarn. And then the rest is acrylic. So overall I have a lot of squares to go, but that's okay. There's plenty of time. The last project took me like 6 months to make all the squares. So I'm anticipating like probably around December is when I'll finish this blanket, but that's okay. You know, it is what it is. The other project that y'all have seen from me before is the Coloring Book Tee by Aimee Sher. And this is something that I started like almost a month ago, about a month ago, and I've been chipping away at it so slowly. It finally looks like a garment, and I finally put the collar on. So this is knit on size 4 needles. It's a size 55 inches, so I think that's an XL, and it's a pretty generously sized raglan. I'm knitting it on merino cashmere nylon blend yarn. I'm micro striping it. So this is some yarn from like my deep stash from a company I used to work for up in Maryland, but no longer work with or want to recommend their yarn. But the colors are gorgeous. That's the thing. So the designer presents 2 views for this sweater. One is like a solid with a contrast collar and cuffs and ribbing. And the other is a solid with kind of some thicker stripes going down the bottom of the body after you split for sleeves. But I chose this micro striping where it's 2 row stripes of kind of this cream and then this brown and purple yarn. I've made so much progress on this since you saw it last. So I finally put the collar on and I finished the length of the body. The only thing that I did is put it on hold here so that I can go ahead and knit the sleeves first. This is exactly 2 skeins of this yarn, which I feel like it went pretty far. The sleeve comes down already, like pretty far on my arm, if you can see that. So I don't think I'll have to use that much brown to knit the sleeves, but I'm hoping that I can put the entire rest of the ball of brown that I have left into the bottom ribbing and make it just that much longer, kind of like a drapey, cozy, sweatshirty type sweater. And I want to do the sleeves first just so that I don't knit it too short. But I'm feeling really good about finishing this, like maybe in the next couple weeks, amongst all the other projects I have brewing. I'm really excited to finish it, even though I won't be able to wear it until, like, honestly, probably like October. And this is what the yarn looks like in the skein. So it is a merino cashmere nylon blend. I did cast this sweater on already once with just this white as the main color, but it was too close to my skin. So I pivoted to the micro stripes. That's why it's all kind of messy looking, but the variegation on this yarn is stunning. Anyways, so those are all the projects I've been working on. I also went to the Maryland Sheep Festival. I actually did some volunteering at the Sheep Festival. Okay, boo, please. I actually did some volunteering this year at the Maryland Sheep Festival, and it was lovely and so fun and so nice to meet all these wonderful people who love sheep and knitting as much as I do. And I have like a little haul, and I'm also going to do kind of an adjacent video that's much more about the sheep festival itself. I'm not going to show my whole entire haul, but I am going to show this yarn because I'm really likely to cast it on really soon. And this is Carodan Farms. It is the Chincoteague Colors Treasure Collection in Island Bluet. And if you are from here or local to here, you'll know that these bluebell flowers bloom everywhere in like the early spring here. They're stunning and gorgeous, and I'll put like a photo of them. But I am looking for pattern suggestions for this yarn. So last year I purchased this identical yarn in red from the same booth, and I loved knitting with it so much that I went back immediately to get more. Look at the drape. This doesn't even stand up really, it flops. It's amazing drape. And I knit the Mount Pleasant tee by Pip Pin. So I have about 850 yards of this yarn, and I'd love to knit another spring, summer, early fall tee. I am interested in something that has like lace on the bottom or somewhere in the pattern, because that was the first pattern I did, and I just really loved how the lace kind of popped the stitch definition of this yarn. So if you have any pattern recommendations for me, please like share them in the comments, or maybe I'll put an Instagram story up looking for recommendations. Otherwise, check out my Maryland Sheep and Wool video for the rest of my haul, but just cannot recommend this yarn enough. And these skeins were each 25 bucks, so I feel like that was a really good deal. I also got some other stuff, but I'm making another video specifically about Maryland Sheep and Wool, so I just wanted to show the yarn here because I think it's gorgeous and exciting. And otherwise, thanks so much for watching. Please consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video.